When researching about Gaia, it became apparent that she is a Mother Nature and is known for her nurturing, feminine, and motherly traits. This really inspired me to create a garment that symbolizes these strengths. In nature, a tree has all these traits. They provide shelter, habitat, and food to other animals and plants. They can also promote new growth for other trees and plants. They are the center of a small ecosystem, just like Gaia, who is the center of nature. My original design is a deep mocha brown floor-length dress with a tight bodice and a long flowy skirt. The skirt's length represents Gaia's connection to the earth. The gown has many twists of different brown fabrics going vertically up the dress to resemble the tree's roots. I designed a necklace that has many hanging strings of beads and buttons to represent the tree's leaves. In my trip to OSF, I found 3 fabrics that really suited my concept. I used the brown lightweight crepe fabric with gold stripes as the outside self. The dark brown medium weight crepe fabric is used as the lining, and the floral chiffon fabric is used for the flowers on the neckline center front. The invisible zipper, green ribbons, and the majority of the beads and buttons are all from OSF. I sourced some horsehair and the light pink and white beads from a previous project. After my trip to OSF, I changed my design to be more consistent with my fabric choices. I began this sketch by painting the silhouette with watercolor to resemble the sheerness of the lightweight crepe fabric. I added the fine details and drag lines with a dark brown pencil crayon. With a yellow pencil, crayon, and marker, I drew in the sparkly lines of the crepe fabric. To finish off this sketch, I drew in green lines with different shades of green pencils, and drew in the center front flower with a marker. And this is my final sketch. During this semester's draping course, we learned how to drape a shawl collar, which really inspired my final design. I began by draping the front bodice piece with a dart on the princess seam from the waistline to the bust apex. Then I draped the back bodice piece with a dart on the back princess seam to ensure a tight fit. I draped the front and back skirt and gathered them every 1 inch to create the gathers. I marked my final pattern and walked it off to ensure that all the pieces lined up. Here is my final draped dress. After cutting out the fabric, I started by sewing the front and back darts. Then I attached the self shawl collar to the lining and the lining shawl collar to the self. I top stitched both neckline seams to keep the seam allowance facing down towards the bodice. This ensures that there is no extra bulkiness in the collar. This is the first fit of the top with the collar. I sewed the horsehair fabric to the lining collar, which gives it more structure to hold all the ribbons and beads. I placed all the ribbons down to the lining shawl and basted them in place. Then attached the shawl lining to the shawl's self piece and hand sewed the lining to the self neckline together to keep the shawls in place. To start the skirt, I sewed all the side seams, then basted 2 stitch lines across the waistline. I pulled the basting threads to create the desired gathers. I sewed the self skirt to the self bodice and the lining skirt to the lining bodice. To attach the invisible zipper, I pinned it to the self, then sewed it on. When attaching the lining to the zipper, I hand-stitched a stitch in the ditch to ensure that all the edges are clean finished and there is no top stitching on the back of the dress. I then hand-stitched the lining waistline seam allowance to the self seam allowance to ensure that the lining and self stay secure to each other and do not shift or warp. I put the dress onto the mannequin to ensure that the fit was correct and that there were no issues with it. Using a 3-thread serger, I serged the armhole lining to the self to make sure that they stay secure. I also serged both hems, meaning the lining hem and the self hem. Here are all of my beaded strings that I will attach to the shawl collar. When beading all the strings, I ensured to leave a long tail to make it easier to attach them to the shawl collar. I hand-stitched the flower to the center front of the neckline with a bead in the center to represent new growth in nature. And here is my final garment.